It was just another quiet morning at St. Mary's Hospital when a small golden puppy suddenly appeared at the entrance, dragging a black bag between his teeth. His paws trembled, his eyes wide with desperation. Nurses stopped mid-conversation as he whined, nudging the bag toward them.
"Where did he come from?"
one of them whispered. But when Dr. Emily bent down and unzipped the bag, her heart froze. What she found inside made the entire hospital gasp. The puppy whimpered softly as if begging for help, and in that instant everyone realized this was no ordinary stray. What lay inside that bag would uncover a heartbreaking story of loyalty, survival, and a love that refused to die. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. It was just past 7 in the morning when the automatic glass doors of St. Mary's Hospital slid open with a soft hiss. The staff at the reception barely looked up until a faint scratching sound echoed through the lobby. At first, no one paid attention. The day had just begun, and nurses were exchanging morning shifts, doctors checking charts. But then came a soft, desperate whimper. A small golden puppy, muddy paws trembling, stepped into the hospital. Between his teeth, he clutched a black leather bag, far too heavy for his tiny frame. His fur was damp, his eyes wide with something that looked eerily like fear and determination. He dragged the bag across the polished floor, leaving faint paw prints behind him. The receptionist gasped. "Oh my God, whose dog is this?" she whispered. A few nurses gathered near the counter, watching as the little dog stopped in the center of the lobby. He dropped the bag and began barking, short, sharp cries that echoed down the hallway. Dr. Emily Hayes, a pediatric surgeon, was just stepping out of the elevator. Her brow furrowed at the sound. "What's going on here?" she asked. One of the nurses pointed toward the dog. He came in on his own. "With that bag." Emily crouched down slowly, careful not to startle the puppy. "Hey, buddy," she murmured softly. "It's okay. What do you have there?" The dog whined, nudging the black bag closer to her with his nose. Her curiosity turned to concern. The bag looked worn and scuffed, the zipper half open as if it had been hurriedly closed. Emily reached out and unzipped it a little more. Inside, she saw what looked like a baby's blanket, slightly damp and smelling faintly of earth. Beneath it, something dark. She froze. A few hospital staff gathered around, whispering, "Who left that out there? Is the dog lost? Maybe there's an ID." The puppy barked again, louder this time, stepping in front of the bag protectively. His tail was low, his breathing rapid. He wasn't just lost, he was trying to tell them something. Emily glanced at the security guard nearby. "Check the entrance cameras. I want to know where he came from." Then she turned to the trembling puppy, her voice gentle. "It's okay, little one. We'll help, I promise." As the cameras flickered on and replayed the footage, everyone leaned in, and what they saw made the room fall silent. The puppy had come from the nearby forest, dragging that heavy bag all the way to the hospital doors. Alone. Something inside that bag, Emily realized, was far more urgent than anyone had guessed. The air in the hospital lobby grew heavy as Dr. Emily knelt beside the black leather bag. The golden puppy stood inches away, eyes darting between her and the bag, his body trembling with exhaustion. His fur clung in damp clumps and his chest rose and fell with quick, anxious breaths. Whatever he had brought, it mattered to him more than anything. Emily slowly unzipped the bag the rest of the way. The faint scent of rain and dirt filled the air. Inside lay a baby's soft pink blanket, folded neatly but stained with mud and what looked like dried blood. Her fingers brushed against something metallic, a small silver locket with an engraving barely visible beneath the grime. She wiped it clean and saw a single word: hope. Her heart tightened. "There's something else," she murmured. She reached deeper and pulled out a crumpled note, the paper damp but still legible. The writing was shaky, hurried, as if written in fear. Emily's eyes scanned the words and her pulse quickened. "If anyone finds this, please help my baby. She's hurt. We're trapped. Follow the dog, he'll lead you to us." Emily froze. The puppy whimpered, pawing at her arm, as if confirming every word of the letter. The lobby, once filled with idle chatter, was now silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the faint, desperate cries of the dog. A nurse covered her mouth. "Oh my God. Someone's out there." Emily stood abruptly. "Call security. We need a search team now." Her voice was firm, but her heart pounded. This dog didn't just wander in, he came for help. The puppy barked again, turning toward the glass doors, scratching at them anxiously. His tail was stiff, his ears perked, urging them to follow. The desperation in his movements was impossible to ignore. Emily looked at the security feed again, watching the puppy's journey. He had emerged from the woods, no leash, no collar, no sign of anyone else. Just determination and fear. The rain-soaked path behind him stretched toward the dense forest that bordered the highway. A security officer approached. "Doctor, we've alerted local authorities, but it could take time before they send help." Emily glanced at the trembling puppy and made a decision. "We don't have time. He knows where to go." She turned to a nurse beside her. "Grab the first aid kit and blankets. We're going after him." The nurse hesitated. "You're serious?" Emily met her gaze. "Look at him. He's trying to save someone." The puppy wagged his tail weakly as if he understood her words. He picked up the bag again, gripping it tightly between his teeth, and turned toward the door. As the hospital staff watched, Emily pushed through the glass doors into the misty morning. The puppy looked back once, making sure she was following, then began trotting toward the forest path. Somewhere beyond those trees, a life was hanging by a thread, and the only guide they had was a small, rain-soaked puppy carrying a stranger's hope. The morning mist clung low to the ground as Dr. Emily stepped outside, her lab coat fluttering lightly in the cool breeze. The puppy trotted ahead, black bag still clutched tightly between his small teeth. Each step he took seemed filled with purpose, his tiny paws splashing through shallow puddles on the cracked pavement. Emily followed close behind, joined by Nurse Claire, who carried a medical kit and flashlight just in case. "Are we really trusting a dog to lead us?" Claire murmured, half breathless as they reached the edge of the hospital parking lot. Emily's eyes didn't leave the puppy. "He came for us. That means someone's still out there, and he's our only lead." The path led them past the back fence and toward the thick woods that bordered the hospital grounds. The early sun struggled through the trees, casting long shadows over the forest floor. The air was damp, the ground soft with mud, and the faint smell of gasoline lingered somewhere in the distance. The puppy stopped suddenly, sniffing the ground before letting out a short bark. He looked back at Emily, tail wagging weakly, urging her to follow faster. Emily crouched briefly, noticing faint tire tracks half buried in mud, fresh and leading deeper into the forest. "Someone's been through here recently," she said quietly. They pushed through low-hanging branches, following the trail for what felt like miles. Every few moments the puppy would pause, sniff the air, and adjust his direction. His determination never wavered, though his little body trembled with fatigue. "Poor thing must have been walking all night," Claire whispered. Emily's heart ached. "He must have come straight from wherever his owner is." He didn't stop, not even to rest. As they climbed a small hill, a faint metallic glint caught Emily's eye through the fog. She froze. "Claire, do you see that?" The puppy barked sharply, running ahead through the brush. Emily and Claire hurried after him, their shoes slipping on the wet ground. As they emerged into a small clearing, the sight before them made their stomachs drop. Half hidden beneath fallen branches and leaves lay the crumpled remains of a silver car, its front end crushed against a tree. The windshield was shattered, steam still rising faintly from the hood. The puppy dropped the bag and began barking frantically, running circles around the wreck. Emily's heart pounded. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Someone's in there." She rushed forward, peering through the broken glass, and saw a woman inside, motionless, her head resting against the steering wheel. The puppy scratched at the car door, whimpering. His eyes pleaded with them. He had brought them home. Emily's breath caught as she peered through the shattered window. The woman inside was barely conscious, her pale face streaked with dirt and blood. The airbag had deployed, but it was torn, deflated, smeared with dried crimson. The puppy barked louder, pawing desperately at the door, his cries echoing through the silent forest like a child's sobs. "Claire, call emergency services," Emily shouted, pulling at the door handle. It was jammed. She cursed under her breath, scanning the car's interior. The woman's head tilted weakly, her lips trembling as if trying to speak. "Hang on," Emily urged, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "We're here now." Claire fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. "This is St. Mary's Hospital. There's been a car accident about half a mile into the East Woods. One victim unconscious but breathing. She listened briefly, then nodded. They're sending a rescue team now. Emily leaned closer to the window. Can you hear me? She called softly. The woman's eyes flickered open for a moment, dull, unfocused, full of pain. My baby, she whispered hoarsely. Emily froze. Your baby where? The woman's trembling hand moved weakly toward the back seat. Emily turned, peering through the cracked glass, and there, beneath a torn blanket, was a small infant carrier. Her stomach twisted. Oh, God. She yanked the rear door, and this one gave way with a metallic groan. The baby inside was still bundled tightly, face pale but breathing faintly. Emily's instincts as a doctor took over. She reached in carefully, her hands trembling only for a second before steadying. Claire, the baby's alive, but we need to move fast. The puppy jumped onto the side of the car, barking frantically as if urging her to hurry. His paws were bleeding slightly from the glass, but he didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. Emily gently lifted the infant, wrapping her in her own coat. The baby let out a weak cry, a sound so small yet so powerful it made everyone freeze in relief. She's breathing, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Claire's eyes filled with tears. The ambulance is 5 minutes out. Emily turned back to the mother. We're getting you both out, she promised. She glanced at the dashboard, fuel leaking, the faint scent of gasoline strong now. We can't wait for rescue. Help me move her! Together they pried open the door with a branch wedged under the handle. The woman groaned softly as Emily and Claire supported her weight, easing her out inch by inch. The puppy stayed close, whining, circling her feet. When they finally laid the woman on the grass, her hand instinctively reached for the baby. Emily guided the tiny bundle into her arms. You're safe now, she whispered. The woman's lips quivered. He brought you, she said weakly, looking at the puppy. He saved us. Emily's throat tightened as she looked at the little dog, mud-covered and panting, sitting beside them protectively. His eyes glistened, as if he understood every word, for a long, fragile moment. The forest was silent, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of approaching sirens. Emily gently stroked the dog's head. You did good, little one, she whispered. You're a hero. The puppy closed his eyes, finally allowing himself a breath of relief. The distant wail of sirens grew louder as Dr. Emily knelt beside the injured woman. Her pulse was weak, her breath shallow, each one a fragile gasp of survival. The baby whimpered softly in her arms, a faint cry echoing through the quiet woods. Emily's heart pounded. Stay with me, she whispered, gently pressing 2 fingers against the woman's neck. You're going to be okay. The puppy hovered close, pacing restlessly in the mud. His fur was matted, his paws bleeding from glass cuts, but his eyes never left the woman and child. He let out a low whine, pressing his nose against the mother's trembling hand as if urging her not to give up. Claire tore open the emergency kit and handed Emily a bandage. We have to stop the bleeding. She glanced anxiously toward the trees. Where's that ambulance? Emily worked quickly, wrapping the woman's arm where a deep gash bled through her torn sleeve. We don't have long, she said. She's losing too much blood, the woman stirred weakly. My name's Sarah, she murmured, her voice barely a breath. Please, my baby. Save her. Emily's throat tightened. She's safe. She's right here. She lowered the tiny infant closer so the mother could see. The woman's trembling fingers brushed the blanket, a tear slipping down her cheek. The puppy whimpered louder, lying beside them now, his head resting near the woman's arm. His chest rose and fell rapidly, eyes flicking between her and Emily. Claire checked her phone. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Emily looked up toward the sound of the sirens echoing between the trees. Good. Keep pressure on the wound. I'm going to check her vitals again. She adjusted Sarah's head slightly, but the woman's breathing faltered, her body going limp for a moment. Sarah, Emily shouted, tapping her cheek gently. Stay with me. The puppy barked suddenly, loud and sharp, as if trying to jolt her awake. Sarah's eyes fluttered open again, unfocused but alive. Emily exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her chest. Good girl, she whispered, to both of them. Moments later, flashing red and blue lights broke through the trees. Paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher, their boots splashing through mud. She's in hypovolemic shock, Emily called out. Severe blood loss. The baby's stable but needs observation. The lead paramedic nodded and signaled his team. As they lifted Sarah onto the stretcher, The puppy let out a soft whimper and tried to climb up after her. Emily caught him gently, holding him back. "Don't worry, little hero," she murmured. "You did your part. You brought her to us." The puppy looked up at her, tail twitching faintly before turning his gaze toward the ambulance. Even as the doors closed and the sirens began again, he refused to look away. He wasn't just a dog anymore, he was hope on 4 legs. The ambulance sped through the misty morning roads, sirens piercing the quiet dawn. Inside, Dr. Emily sat beside Sarah, monitoring her pulse while the paramedics worked swiftly to stabilize her. The baby rested in a small portable crib, wrapped in a clean blanket. Yet even amid the chaos, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the puppy, the little hero left behind in the forest, sitting helplessly in the mud as the ambulance pulled away. Later that evening, after ensuring both mother and child were in critical care, Emily finally sat in her office, exhausted but restless. Her mind kept replaying the puppy's eyes, those pleading, intelligent eyes that had carried a story far deeper than anyone realized. "He saved them," she whispered to herself. But how? Hours later, Sarah awoke in the hospital room, her body weak but her mind flickering with fragments of memory. Emily was there when she opened her eyes. "You're safe," she said softly. "Your baby's fine." "You both made it," Sarah's lips quivered. "The dog. Is he okay?" Emily smiled faintly. "He's resting at the shelter. Don't worry, he's safe too." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He wasn't just a stray." Emily leaned closer, sensing a story buried in those words. Sarah took a deep, trembling breath. "His name is Buddy. My husband found him abandoned near our old farmhouse months ago. We were struggling. He had just come back from military service, and Buddy was the only thing that made him smile again. When my husband died in an accident 2 months ago, that puppy, he wouldn't leave my side. He'd follow me everywhere like he knew I was breaking inside." Her voice cracked as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Yesterday morning, I took the baby for a checkup. The storm came out of nowhere. The car skidded off the road. I hit the tree. I remember being trapped, bleeding, unable to move. I could barely breathe. I thought, that was it." She paused, shaking. "But Buddy, he climbed out through the broken window. He licked my face once, then grabbed the black bag with his teeth and ran off into the rain." Emily's eyes widened. "He carried that all the way to the hospital?" Sarah nodded weakly. "That bag had my baby's blanket, the letter, the locket my husband gave me. I wrote the note while I could still hold the pen. I told whoever found it to follow Buddy." The room went silent, save for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Emily sat back, awe washing over her. A small, frightened puppy had trekked through miles of forest, through mud and rain, guided only by love and instinct, to bring help. Sarah's gaze softened. "He didn't just save us," she whispered. "He carried my husband's promise." Emily swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. "Then he's not just Buddy," she said softly. "He's a guardian." Morning light spilled through the tall hospital windows, painting the corridors in soft gold. News of the incredible rescue spread faster than anyone expected. By the time Sarah and her baby were wheeled into the ward, half the staff had already heard the story about the little puppy who had crossed a storm to save them. When the ambulance pulled in earlier, the puppy had refused to stay behind. He had followed the flashing lights all the way to the hospital gate, limping slightly, soaked to the bone, but refusing to stop. The security guard at the entrance had tried to keep him out, but his cries were so pitiful that even the guard's stern resolve broke. "Let him in," Emily had said softly. "He's family." Now, as Sarah lay in her hospital bed, ivy lines running gently into her arm, the door creaked open and there he was. Buddy padded into the room quietly, his golden fur still dull from the rain but his eyes alive with relief. The nurses paused in the doorway, hands pressed over their hearts. The moment Buddy saw Sarah, his entire body transformed. His tail began wagging furiously and he let out a soft, high-pitched whine. He trotted to the bedside, placing his paws gently on the mattress, his eyes glistening as he sniffed her hand. Sarah weakly reached out and touched his head, tears welling instantly. "You found help," she whispered. "You saved us, Buddy." The baby in the crib stirred, letting out a soft coo. Buddy turned his head instantly, ears perked, then gave a small protective bark, as if announcing that the world could now rest easy because his family was safe. The nurses giggled softly through their tears. Emily watched from the corner of the room, a smile forming on her tired face. You should have seen him, she told Sarah. He never gave up. He dragged that bag through the rain, across the road, all the way to the hospital. He wouldn't rest until we followed. Sarah stroked Buddy's ears gently. My husband used to say dogs have hearts bigger than their bodies, she murmured. I never believed it. Until now. Outside the room, doctors and patients gathered quietly, peeking through the glass. For a brief moment, the hospital, usually filled with stress, urgency, and quiet tears, felt different. It felt alive. In that room, under the morning sunlight, a woman, her baby, and a muddy golden puppy reminded everyone watching what true love and loyalty looked like. And for the first time in a long while, even the toughest doctors wiped their eyes. The hospital corridors buzzed with tense energy as Sarah was rushed into the operating room. Despite being stabilized earlier, her condition had suddenly worsened. Internal bleeding that hadn't been visible before now threatened her life. The doctors moved fast, voices clipped and urgent. We're losing pressure. Prepare for emergency surgery. Outside the operating room, the puppy, Buddy, paced restlessly. His paws clicked softly against the cold tile floor, his tail stiff with worry. He had refused to leave since the moment Sarah was taken in, sitting right outside the door with his ears perked and eyes locked on the glowing red surgery in progress sign. Nurses passing by would glance at him, some smiling sadly, others wiping tears from their eyes. He hasn't moved in hours, one whispered. He just sits there waiting. Dr. Emily stepped out for a moment, scrubbing her hands clean after assisting with the preparations. Her eyes found Buddy immediately. She knelt beside him, running a gentle hand through his fur. She's fighting, little one, she murmured. You brought her this far. Don't give up on her now. Buddy looked up at her, whining softly, and then turned his gaze back to the door. He let out a faint bark, almost as if answering her. I won't. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. The rhythmic beep of machines filled the room as doctors worked tirelessly. Sarah's blood pressure dropped dangerously low. She's crashing, the anesthesiologist warned. Emily glanced at the monitor, her heart pounding. We need more units now. Outside, Buddy's ears twitched. He sensed the tension in the air. His body tensed as if he could feel her slipping away. He pressed closer to the door, nose against the metal, whimpering louder. The baby, resting safely in the nursery down the hall, suddenly began to cry. A soft, piercing wail that echoed faintly through the ward. Nurses turned, startled. Buddy's head snapped toward the sound, and for a moment his eyes softened. He gave a single bark, then returned his attention to the door. Minutes passed. Then 20, then 40. The hallway fell silent except for the faint buzz of lights. Every person who passed paused for a moment, watching the little dog guarding the door like a soldier on duty. Then, suddenly, the red light above the operating room flickered off. The door opened slowly and Dr. Emily stepped out, her mask hanging loose around her neck. Her face glistened with sweat, but her eyes carried relief. Buddy jumped up instantly, barking once, twice, tail wagging cautiously. Emily crouched beside him, smiling through exhaustion. She made it, she whispered. You hear me? She's safe. The puppy tilted his head, then gave a small, trembling whine. His tail wagged faster, his body relaxing for the first time in hours. In that quiet hallway, under the pale hospital light, the little dog finally closed his eyes and rested his head on his paws. His mission, for now, complete. The storm had long passed, and the hospital was quiet again. Sarah was resting peacefully in her room, the faint rhythm of machines echoing softly around her. The baby slept nearby in a clear crib, tiny fingers curled into fists, her breathing calm and steady. Buddy lay curled up on the floor beside the bed, his head resting on his paws, his fur still slightly damp but his spirit at ease for the first time in days. Dr. Emily sat by the window, holding the crumpled, rain-stained note that had been found inside the black bag. Until now, no one had taken a closer look at it. The chaos of saving lives had consumed every moment. But tonight, under the soft hum of fluorescent light, Emily finally unfolded the fragile paper. The handwriting was faint, shaky, and full of emotion. She smoothed the creases and began to read. If someone finds this, please help my baby. My name is Sarah Miller. The bag you're holding has my husband's dog tag and our baby's ultrasound. My husband, Daniel, was a soldier. He rescued this puppy during his last deployment. He said if anything ever happened to him, Buddy would protect us the way he protected his unit. He was right. He always was. Emily's eyes blurred with tears. She paused, pressing the paper to her chest. The message continued. If I don't make it, please make sure my baby grows up knowing her father was a hero, and that the dog who came into our lives saved us both. Buddy is family. Please don't let him be alone. By the time Emily reached the end, her throat had tightened. The letter wasn't just a plea for help, it was a love story, a farewell and a legacy bound by loyalty. She looked over at Buddy, now sleeping soundly at Sarah's feet. His ears twitched as if he were still listening, still on guard even in his dreams. The small silver locket from the bag glimmered faintly on the bedside table beside the baby's blanket. Emily picked it up and opened it gently. Inside was a tiny photograph, Sarah, Daniel, and Buddy as a puppy, smiling in front of their old farmhouse. Emily swallowed hard. You kept your promise, little one, she whispered, glancing at Buddy. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into an envelope. This, she murmured, belongs to her. Outside the room, a quiet peace settled over the ward. The storm had taken much, but it had also revealed something beautiful. Love that refused to die, and a dog who carried that love through the rain to save a family. Night descended softly over St. Mary's Hospital. The corridors, once filled with hurried footsteps and hushed conversations, had grown quiet. Only the distant hum of machines and the occasional echo of a nurse's shoes broke the silence. Inside room 214, a warm lamplight glowed faintly against the pale blue walls. Sarah slept soundly now, her body recovering, the rise and fall of her chest steady and calm. The baby slept too in the crib beside her, tiny, safe, and peaceful. But one pair of eyes refused to close. Buddy lay at the foot of the bed, his body curled but his gaze fixed on Sarah. Every few minutes his ears twitched, reacting to the faintest sound. He hadn't moved for hours. Nurses passing by would peek through the small window in the door. He hasn't even eaten, one whispered. Another smiled softly. He's guarding her. Look at that focus. You'd think he was born for this. Dr. Emily stopped by quietly, holding a small bowl of food and a clean towel. Hey, little hero, she whispered as she entered. Buddy lifted his head but didn't wag his tail. His eyes said everything, he would eat later. Right now he had a job to do. Emily placed the bowl near him anyway. You can rest, she murmured, gently stroking his fur. She's safe now. Buddy looked up at her, then back to Sarah. His tail moved once, a slow, weary wag. He rested his head on his paws again, sighing softly. Through the long hours of the night, he remained there. Whenever Sarah shifted slightly or the baby let out a small cry, Buddy's head would lift instantly, alert and ready. When everything settled, he'd lower himself again, eyes half open, heart still on duty. The monitors beeped steadily, their rhythm almost soothing. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping lightly on the window. Emily, walking past later that night, paused at the doorway. The sight melted her heart, the woman sleeping peacefully, her baby dreaming beside her, and the golden puppy keeping silent watch, a guardian made of pure loyalty. As dawn crept in, the first rays of sunlight touched Buddy's fur, making it glow a soft amber. He blinked slowly, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. For the first time since the rescue, he allowed himself to close them completely. Even as sleep claimed him, one paw remained stretched toward the bed, touching the blanket, as if to make sure she was still there. And with that small, silent gesture, the entire hospital understood. Buddy wasn't just guarding her life. He was guarding her heart. The first light of morning crept gently into room 214, painting the floor in soft amber streaks. The long night had finally surrendered to dawn. Nurses moved quietly through the hallways, changing IV bags and whispering updates. But inside that room, something magical was unfolding. Buddy stirred before anyone else. His ears twitched. His head lifted suddenly. The faint beep of the heart monitor had changed rhythm, stronger, steadier. He stood up, tail giving one tentative wag. He leaned closer to the bed, his wet nose brushing against the blanket. Moments later, Sarah's fingers twitched. Then again, slowly her eyelids fluttered open, blinking against the golden morning light. For a few seconds, her gaze was unfocused, as though she were still caught in the fog between sleep and life. But then she heard it, the soft whine she knew by heart. Her lips curved weakly. Buddy? Her voice cracked from dryness, but it was enough. Buddy's reaction was instant. He barked once, sharp, joyful, echoing down the hallway. His tail wagged furiously, his whole body trembling with excitement. Nurses came rushing in, startled at first, but when they saw Sarah's open eyes, they froze in disbelief. "She's awake," one cried out. Dr. Emily was there within seconds, her stethoscope in hand, heart racing as she checked the monitors. "Blood pressure's rising. Oxygen stable," she said with a smile breaking through her fatigue. "Welcome back, Sarah." Tears glistened at the corners of Sarah's eyes as she turned her head slightly toward the crib. Her baby stirred, letting out a small sigh in her sleep. "She's okay?" Emily nodded softly. "Perfectly fine. And she's been waiting for you, just like him." She glanced down at Buddy, who had now climbed halfway onto the bed, resting his chin carefully on Sarah's leg. Sarah's trembling hand found his head, her fingers brushing over his soft fur. "You never left, did you?" she whispered. Buddy responded with a quiet whine, pressing closer as if to say, "I promised I wouldn't." Nurses exchanged emotional glances. One of them wiped her eyes discreetly. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. Emily smiled faintly. "You're looking at something stronger than medicine," she said. "You're looking at love." Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, spilling light across the hospital grounds. Inside room 214, a fragile heartbeat had turned into a song of survival, and in that moment, every soul who witnessed it believed, miracles do happen. The afternoon sun poured through the wide hospital windows, washing the room in a golden glow. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor had become the soft music of healing. Sarah sat upright for the first time since her surgery, her color returning, her hands trembling slightly as she reached toward the crib beside her. The baby cooed softly, tiny hands reaching upward as if recognizing her mother's touch. At the foot of the bed, Buddy lay stretched out, his fur brushed clean now, his eyes half closed in contentment. He had refused to leave the room even once since Sarah woke up, and the hospital staff had long since accepted that this dog belonged there, that he had earned his place. Dr. Emily entered quietly, a gentle smile lighting her face. "Look who's back to full strength," she said softly. "I think we can finally say you're both out of danger." Sarah smiled weakly, her gaze shifting to the sleeping puppy. "Not all of us," she murmured. "He never stopped watching over us. He hasn't even slept properly." Emily crouched down, running her hand along Buddy's back. "He will, once he knows you're safe for good." As if on cue, Buddy lifted his head, tail wagging lazily, and climbed closer to Sarah's bed. His paws rested gently on the blanket, and he looked up at her with eyes full of warmth and relief. Sarah reached down, cupping his face in her hands. "You did it, Buddy," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You saved me. And her." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from gratitude. The baby stirred again, letting out a small cry. Buddy turned instantly, alert but calm, as though understanding his duty had shifted. He walked to the crib, peeking over the edge. The infant's cries softened, her tiny fingers reaching toward him. Everyone in the room froze, touched by the sight. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "He knows she's his responsibility now." Sarah smiled through her tears. "She'll grow up knowing that." A nurse entered quietly, holding a bouquet of flowers sent by one of the hospital staff. "These are from everyone in pediatrics," she said. They wanted to thank the little hero. Attached to the bouquet was a small tag that read, "For the bravest heart in St. Mary's." Emily clipped the tag onto Buddy's collar, where it hung beside the locket Sarah had given him earlier, the one engraved with her husband's name. Buddy sniffed it once, then rested his head gently against Sarah's lap, as though claiming the moment forever. For the first time since that stormy night, peace filled the room. No sirens, no fear, just a mother, her child, and a dog bound by an unbreakable promise. And as the sunlight danced across the floor, it seemed to whisper the truth everyone now believed: heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they have 4 paws and a heart that never gives up. The rain had finally cleared, leaving the sky outside a soft blue. Sunlight streamed through the window of Sarah's hospital room, warming the air and casting golden reflections across the polished floor. The baby slept soundly in her crib, wrapped in a clean blanket. Buddy lay nearby, dozing but still alert enough that every creak of the door made his ears twitch. Dr. Emily entered quietly, holding the black leather bag that had started it all. It had been cleaned, though the scuff marks and faint stains still told the story of what it had been through. "I thought you might want this back," she said softly, placing it on the table beside Sarah's bed. Sarah's eyes widened. "That bag," she whispered. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for it. "I never thought I'd see it again," Emily smiled gently. "It's more than just a bag, isn't it?" Sarah nodded, her gaze softening. "It was my husband's." She unzipped it slowly, her fingers tracing the familiar fabric. Inside lay the few precious items that had survived the storm, each one carrying a piece of her past. The baby's blanket now washed and folded neatly, the silver locket Emily had seen before, and tucked into a side pocket something new, a small, worn envelope she hadn't noticed before. Her breath caught. "This wasn't here before the accident," she murmured. Carefully, she opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper with her husband's handwriting. Her eyes blurred instantly as she began to read. "If you're reading this, it means Buddy found you. I trained him to protect you both no matter what. Remember, Sarah, hope isn't something we carry. It's something we pass on. As long as you have each other, you'll never be alone." Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. She pressed the note to her chest, sobbing quietly. "He wrote this before his last mission," she said between breaths. "I thought I lost it forever." Emily's eyes glistened. "And yet it found its way back to you through Buddy." Sarah looked at the dog, who had lifted his head and was now watching her with calm, soulful eyes. "He carried Daniel's promise," she whispered. "That bag wasn't just full of memories. It was full of love that refused to be buried." Buddy wagged his tail gently and nudged the locket with his nose. Sarah smiled through her tears, fastening the locket around her neck. Emily stood quietly for a moment, her heart full. "Sometimes," she said softly, "miracles come in small, muddy packages." Sarah nodded, clutching the letter. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "They come on 4 legs, and never give up." Outside, the light grew warmer, filling the room with peace. The truth about the black bag had finally been revealed. It wasn't just a cry for help. It was a message of faith, loyalty, and undying love carried by a dog who refused to let hope die. By the end of the week, the story had spread far beyond the hospital walls. What began as a quiet act of loyalty in a rain-soaked forest had become a headline that captured hearts across the nation. Local reporters arrived at St. Mary's, their cameras flashing as nurses and doctors smiled proudly, recounting the unbelievable tale of the small golden puppy who had saved a mother and her child. "People are calling him the miracle dog," one reporter said as Buddy sat beside Sarah's wheelchair, tail wagging gently. "How does it feel knowing your dog is a hero?" Sarah's voice trembled with emotion. "He's always been one," she replied softly. "The world just knows it now." Dr. Emily stood behind them, watching the scene unfold. She had seen hundreds of medical miracles in her career, but none like this, none that began with a dog dragging a black bag through the rain. "Sometimes," she told a nurse beside her, "the heroes don't wear scrubs. Sometimes they bark." The hospital lobby had transformed into a celebration of compassion. Flowers and handwritten notes filled the counters. Children came to see Buddy, each offering treats and hugs. The staff had even placed a small nameplate on his collar that read, "Buddy, St. Mary's Honorary Guardian." The moment that touched everyone most came when Sarah was discharged. The hospital gathered in the courtyard under a bright spring sky. As she stepped out, holding her baby close, Buddy walked proudly beside her, his fur shining in the sunlight. Reporters snapped photos, but the world seemed to quiet for a moment when Sarah knelt and hugged him tightly. "You gave me a second chance," she whispered. Dr. Emily, standing nearby, felt tears sting her eyes. She leaned toward one of the paramedics who had been there that first day. "Do you think he knew what he was doing?" she asked. The man smiled faintly. "I think he just followed his heart." That evening, Buddy's photo filled news feeds across the country. Headlines read, "Hero dog brings black bag to hospital, saves mother and baby." Donations flooded in to support local rescue centers. Messages poured in from around the world, people promising to adopt, to love, to believe again in the goodness that sometimes wears fur. At the center of it all sat Buddy, unaware of the fame surrounding him, content with a full belly and the soft weight of Sarah's baby sleeping beside him. And though he never understood the words hero or miracle, he didn't have to. He was both. Months passed, and life slowly returned to peace. Spring melted into summer, painting the town in soft greens and golden light. St. Mary's Hospital had long since moved on to new patients and new stories, but no one ever forgot the little golden puppy who had carried hope through a storm. One warm afternoon, the hospital staff gathered near the front garden where roses now bloomed in full color. Dr. Emily stood beside the new sign that read, Buddy's Garden, dedicated to the spirit of loyalty and love. Patients and nurses smiled as children played nearby. It wasn't just a memorial. It was a reminder of what one small act of courage could mean. A familiar sound made everyone turn. The front door slid open and Sarah walked in, healthy and radiant, pushing a stroller. The baby giggled softly inside, waving her tiny hands toward the crowd. Walking proudly beside them, wearing a bright blue service dog vest, was Buddy. His fur gleamed in the sunlight, his steps confident, his tail wagging with quiet pride. The hospital erupted in warm applause. Nurses clapped, doctors smiled, and even visitors stopped to watch. Dr. Emily approached, her face glowing with joy. "Look at you," she said, crouching to scratch behind Buddy's ear. "All official now, huh?" Sarah laughed, her voice thick with emotion. "He's trained as my therapy and protection dog now," she said. "He helps with my recovery, and he's amazing with the baby." She leaned down, her gaze full of affection. He never lets her out of his sight. The baby reached out of the stroller, giggling as Buddy gently pressed his nose against her tiny fingers. The moment was so pure, so full of warmth, that it drew tears to more than a few eyes around them. Dr. Emily exhaled softly. "You know," she said, "I still think about that morning. The bag, the rain, the way he refused to give up. He changed so many lives without even realizing it." Sarah nodded, looking at the garden, her eyes glistening. "I think Daniel would have been proud," she said softly. "Buddy didn't just save us. He carried his spirit home," Emily smiled. "And maybe that's what miracles really are, not flashes of magic, but quiet acts of love that never stop moving forward." Buddy looked up at them both, tail thumping gently against the path as if agreeing. The wind rustled through the garden, carrying the laughter of nurses and children in the background. For a moment, time stood still. As Sarah walked away down the sunny path, pushing the stroller, Buddy trotted faithfully beside her, head high, eyes bright, every step full of quiet purpose. He had once carried a black bag through the storm to save a life. Now he carried a lifetime of love, hope, and peace wherever he went. And in every heart that remembered his story, Buddy's journey would never truly end.